Welcome back to Lit by the Fire. I am Ryan, or Uncle Ryan, as some of you know me, here to give uncles a better name. And a shout out to my niece, Daphne, whose eighth birthday it is today. And so I hope her celebration is amazing. Today, you are in for a special treat because we will be reading some of Wesley's stories in The Good Guys Win. And these stories are absolute cartoon mayhem wonder. And so, as I begin this, I hope you enjoy. And we may be here for an hour and some change because his stories are a little longer than Newton's. But we begin with an incredible story called The Alien Burger Crisis. Buckle up. Zagnite floated into the main section of his spaceplane, the Neutron 10, and grabbed a snack from the cupboard. It was the last of their food. The flavor was protein-blasted grass, the cheapest flavor found on the Zycane market. Zagnite looked over at the cockpit where his co-pilot, Nolik, was flying smoothly, doing better than most others did on their first mission of high importance. Zagnite turned on the hologram table projector. So far from home, the only thing Zagnite had to remind him of his home planet was his book of holograms. He pulled out his oldest memory chip, the ceremony inaugurating his first mission of high importance, and inserted it into the projector. Zagnite watched. He saw the announcer, extra tall for his species, with spots larger than most. The announcer spoke for a while. After that, Zagnite's dad walked up and gave a proud speech. Zagnite's dad spoke of concerns for the Zycane species, specifically that the human species might mistake them for weird cows. That the humans wouldn't notice the Zycane IQ exceeded cows by 200 points. Then Zagnite's dad commanded the bridge to be extended and the spaceplane door opened. It showed Zagnite boarding the spaceplane, so excited. Zagnite turned off the hologram table. He felt ready to return to Zycane 8 after so much time away and wondered whether his dad's own voyages had led him safely home. His tail flicked at the memory. His dad, the legendary pilot and trainer, had equipped Zagnite for this mission. He thought about his family and said, "I hope this last stage of my mission is quick." Nolik floated over to the hologram table. For a year now, Nolik had been training with Zagnite, Zagnite's only student. Most pilots never made it to the title of professional. Yet Nolik had achieved this in less than a year. As Nolik retrieved the recording chip from the technology drawer, he said, "While we are spying on the humans, our main focus is on monitoring their medicine, economy, and war sectors. So, I saw something amazing on the holograms we recorded last week from satellite imagery." A hologram appeared. It looked similar to a spatula. Nolik was exuberant, showing his unusual interest in human technology. "It's called a fly swatter. It spanks parasites and young humans. A ritual way of telling others to behave." That sounds painful," Zagnite said. "Who would smack their masterpieces with a non-recyclable whacker?" He hoped this question would end this part of the conversation. Taking hold of the keyboard, Zagnite switched the hologram to an F-22 fighter jet. "This is our concern, Nolik. We need to pay extra attention to this. Humans are murderous, destructive, beef-craving bipeds. Medicine is just an excuse to make their species think that their soldiers will always survive war, and economy makes their species forget about how many of their soldiers die on the battlefield." Zagnite scrolled through the holograms of missiles, rockets, guns, tanks, bombs, submarines, and fighter jets. "These humans are never friendly. Look at how they slaughter these cows." He showed a hologram video of the burger-making process. Nolik watched as the humans ground up the guts, made a patty, and cooked it. Nolik cringed at the cowicide. And when the party fell into When the patty fell into sandwich bun, he unplugged the hologram table so that he could stop watching. Zagnite said, "It's called a hamburger, and with a yellow substance on top, it's called a cheeseburger." Nolik whimpered. "I get that it's frightening, but..." Zagnite's attempt at comfort was cut short by Nolik's scream, "We look like bipedal cows with no snouts and antenna!" Zagnite felt his concerns precisely. The same concerns his dad had long spoken on Zykan 8. "Get some sleep," he told Nolik. "You sound like you are having hallucinations of paranoia. The humans have only made it to their moon 6 times, and it's hard to find one of us that haven't walked on our moon. The humans aren't a threat yet. They are too concerned with killing each other." "But," Nolik whimpered, "once they find out about us, they will be a threat." Zagnite couldn't wait to be finished with the mission. Right on schedule, he heard the beep of the final maneuver being started. The spaceplane cut through the atmosphere. Nolik sleepily walked into the cockpit, getting used to the return of gravity. But seeing in the window fire wrapping around the spaceplane nose, he instantly woke up. "Are we approaching the atmosphere at a bad angle? Are we taking damage? Why are we engulfed in flames?" "Nolik, calm down," Zagnite assured his student. "The atmosphere of Earth is unlike the atmosphere at home. Nitrogen and oxygen. At home, there's just nitrogen, so we don't have any combusting particles. Since oxygen is flammable, the spaceplane gets covered in fire whenever we conduct ground samples on Earth. It will stop eventually." Nolik still found this frightening. He comforted himself by fidgeting with his tail. Zagnite and Nolik had decided to risk a landing so that they could get a large amount of information and get home faster. They killed their horizontal speed and lowered the ship down vertically. The Zykan spaceplane could cloak while in the air, so they didn't fear the humans spotting their approach. In the dark of night, the craft slipped down to a small clearing in a large forest. When the ship reached 100 feet above the ground, they broke the cloak to lower the landing gear. A sudden blast rang in the clearing. A split second after that, the back right engine blew apart. Nolik leaned forward in the pilot's seat, yanking the yoke, and managed to land the craft roughly on the ground. The landing gear snapped off and it hit the forest floor. Zagnite looked at the damage screen and checked the total repair cost. The cost skyrocketed to the average Zykan yearly salary. "Great," Zagnite said. "We can't afford to send a distress call." Nolik added, "The distress beacon is broken anyway." Zagnite groaned. "We're stuck here until we fix it ourselves." Zagnite put on his utility belt with its diagnostics tools and the heat ray, which Zykan protocol allowed only for utility or self-defense, never for aggression. Their first look at the damage suggested the engine explosion was a freak accident. No humans were reported in the area, not in the forest nor the nearby mountain. But they could never be too careful. After checking the damage on the outside of the spaceplane, Nolik started to feel hungry. Zagnite remembered he had eaten the last of their snacks. They hadn't thought to save snacks for the trip back, thinking that they would already be in hyperspace for the blitz back to Zykan 8. Zagnite said, "Let's find a food source here that's safe for us to eat." Nolik looked for easy food. A small distance forward, he saw a sprout of green. It looked edible, so Nolik walked up and plucked it. It had an orange body that looked very tasty. But before he could eat it, a rabbit, with an attitude, snatched it away. Nolik was annoyed. He was hungry, and the food here already seemed to have an owner. He pulled out his heat ray, ready to scare the rabbit, but Zagnite yelled at him, "No, you don't! Show Zykan peace to the fuzzy creature." Nolik holstered his heat ray and kicked a rock to show his frustrations. That's when Zagnite remembered his genetic power of charming creatures. The charms didn't work on everybody. When he was little, he tried the charms on everything. They had the greatest effect on less intelligent species, but on the super intelligent Zycane, they did nothing. They only growled and repressed his control. Zagnite twitched his antennas and reached out to the minds of the lesser creatures, squirrels, rabbits, and bears. His antennas shot out little pulses, and Zagnite sent a thought to the animals. Bears hunt salmon, rabbits raid farms, squirrels find nuts, then bring them to me. 15 minutes later, a pile of food lay on the ground. Nolik ate. Soon the sun began to rise, and Zagnite felt his nocturnal nature tell him to go back to the ship and get some sleep. They hiked back to their space plane, talking about the repairs they needed to do. But as Zagnite walked up the hill, he heard a faint sound of a human helicopter in the distance. Zagnite made Nolik duck beneath a big root, hoping that they wouldn't be seen. After a while, they noticed that there wasn't any approaching aircraft. Wondering what was happening, Zagnite snuck out and up over the hill. He noticed that the helicopter sound was getting louder in the direction of their space plane. Oh, he ran. He made it just in time to see 4 helicopters carrying off the Neutron 10. Zagnite fell to his knees and clasped the back of his head. Nolik ran up for a moment later and saw far off in the distance their space plane get dropped into a mountain with an open top. Oh, that mountain we thought was natural must actually be a human base, Nolik exclaimed. Do you see that shimmer? It's metal inside. Zagnite sat on a log, exhausted but determined. The humans could be anywhere, and they had a head start. Hostiles could be on all sides. Zagnite and Nolik had to think fast. Nolik said, "We should go just ask for it back. Maybe use the charms to talk in one language." Zagnite snapped back. "Are you insane? Remember the burger grinder? The humans will capture you. They're not as smart as us, but they can't be controlled like rabbits and squirrels. What if charming the humans just makes them more angry? We should just steal the Neutron 10 back." "I don't want to take the risk of being caught." "Yet we're nocturnal, and they're diurnal. We have better eyes than them. We can sneak in the mountain without them noticing us. Now, come on. We have no choice." Nolik couldn't argue with his mentor. Zagnite had them sleep through the day under the trees. They traded off keeping watch until after sunset. Then they hiked up the mountain in the direction they saw the helicopters go. The mountain base was fortified with big, heavy gates and tall stone walls. Zagnite arrived in time to watch the gates close supposedly for nightfall. The gates were too thick to shoot through with his heat ray, so he decided to climb the wall. Nolik stayed below, watching on guard. Zagnite scaled the wall with his long arms. When he got to the top, he spent no time standing in victory because he heard a collection of clicks. He instantly ducked and pulled his heat ray out of his belt. "Relax, self-defense only," he told himself, but his mind was on sizzling burgers. Suddenly the nets flew this way and that. He ducked, narrowly avoiding the trap, but he was stuck on top of the wall. He realized then that the gates had just closed because an alien hunting gang of humans had just come in from duty and spotted him with their night vision goggles. He thought about getting out the heat ray, but with all the flying nets, he barely had room to lift his weapon arm. Seeing that he needed help, Nolik climbed the wall and rescued Zagnite. By the time they reached the bottom of the wall, they were surrounded by a large crowd of humans in white trench coats. Zagnite pulled out the heat ray and shot the sky to distract them. This made an opening. Zagnite escaped with Nolik, leading the chase toward the forest. The foot chase ran from the mountain base deep into the forest, with the humans and their vehicles always in earshot behind them. The chase went so long that the humans started to get tired, and as it was long past their bedtime, which allowed Zagnite to give them the slip. The humans kept firing nets until they lost track of where Zagnite and Nolik were. As the night fell into the day, Nollik saw multiple guards patrolling the forest interior. Zagnite, there are too many guards. We need a hijack plan, Zagnite said. We can't keep our space. They can't keep our space plane. Look, over there is a clearing. If we use the clearing for sleep and shelter, we might have a place to do heist planning. Nollik raised his arms. Oh, I have an idea. Remember the orange rods that had the green on top of them? I think that the humans call them carrots. The animals that gave them to us could be charmed to dig us into the base. Zagnite smiled at the idea. He sat down, focused, and searched the forest with his mind for all the possible places animals could be. He soon charmed an army of rabbits, moles, worms, and burrowing foxes in a 10-mile radius, as well as someone's pet pug, and delivered his message. Dig into the base! The telepathy was very tiring, yet the animals worked like professionals. Zagnite and Nollik, during the cover of night, watched the animals work. They showed skills usually awarded with a doctorate, and they made the tunnel into the mountain beautiful. Zagnite then led Nollik up the length of the tunnel to where it ended below a thin metal floor. Zagnite used the heat ray to melt his way in. Zagnite and Nollik snuck down the halls. They shot any and every surveillance camera they saw with their heat rays. They knew the cameras were spy tools, like their own holograms. They made their way into the security room. No one was guarding the desk. No one seemed to know they were inside the base. They looked at the camera feeds. The cameras they had shot were just blank screens. On the final screen, to their horror, they saw the Neutron 10 being taken apart piece by the humans. Nollik! Zagnite shouted in horror. Our only way home! Nollik panicked as the humans burned the flight book because they didn't know what to do with it. In another camera feed, they saw a runway hangar full of fighter jets that looked like F-22 Raptors. Nollik said, Zagnite, I know that you are against the equipment of war, but we should use the jets. Zagnite wanted payback, but refused. Oh, we can't. But if we don't kill anyone? Zagnite didn't know their next move. If they couldn't take action soon, they could be stuck on Earth forever. We need to send the humans a message, he said. We need our ship back, even if we have to scare them. He pushed aside his hate of their war technology and agreed to steal the Raptor. After a short hike to the hangar, Zagnite pulled out his heat ray and shot the window that looked out over the runway. The hangar was long. It took 3 minutes to reach the fighter jets in the back. By the time he and Nollik got to the end, they were both winded. The jets were larger than they had expected, but they looked just as menacing as in the holo pictures made by their drone scans from the Neutron 10. Zagnite told his student, Have courage. Nollik told his mentor, See you in the skies. They both scrambled into different fighter jets. In the cockpit of his jet, Zagnite fumbled with the controls. He went up and down with the landing flaps, and he took a while to close the hatch. But soon he managed to get the jet zipping down the runway. Zagnite and Nollik traded information over the radio. They both knew their way around a flight stick. It was the usual control method for most moon transport spaceplanes back at home. They left the base and took to the sky. The jets were fast, so fast that they needed to be at 50% throttle just to get good handling with the plane. They spun around and put the human base in their sights. Nollik shot first. He destroyed the machinery on the outside of the mountain to show the humans that the Zycane were angry with them. The humans shot back. A few bullets bounced off of Zagnite's jet wings. The bullets didn't seem to be effective at sinking the jets. We're looking good, Zagnite said over the radio. I'll hit the electrical generator over on the far side. Zagnite lined up for the shot. He switched on the missiles. He hesitated, not knowing if any humans were inside the generator, but he ignored his conscience, broke policy, and fired his missiles anyway. Guilt filled Zagnite's face as the explosion lit up the night sky. He swooped his plane around. A large boom shattered the silence. Zagnite called for Nollik on the radio. Turning round, he saw the pieces of Nollik's plane crashing down and Nollik's ejected seat descending with a parachute. A squad of humans rallied below to catch Nollik with their net guns. Zagnite seethed through his square teeth and breathed heavily. His friend was in the hands of the humans! He throttled to full and jammed the stick. He shot off the hatch overhead. As the jet whizzed toward the mountainside, Zagnite jumped out of the cockpit carelessly, not even ejecting, and soared in free fall. He prepared to land on the hard ground. The jet exploded into the mountain. As Zagnite landed, his bones strong enough that they didn't break. The humans tried to net him. He shot their net guns with his heat ray, burning them back. Any human that got close, he shot in the arm or leg. He had to get close to Nollik. By the time he made it to Nollik's ejected seat, his friend had already been dragged away. Time was up. Nollik had been captured. His space plane was destroyed. The humans had been known for taking creatures apart in a science called dissection, the most horrifying thing humans were known for, and he feared that after Nollik was killed, Zagnite would be captured and subjected to the same evil. Zagnite stole away to safety and sat down on a fallen log. Fighting hadn't solved anything. All it did was make his friend get captured. Animals came and sat down beside him. Squirrels, rabbits, and bears all shared in his sadness. They somehow knew he was sad. He had released these animals from their charms, but it seemed the charms had made them smarter. Zagnite sat up with a sudden realization. What if charms could work on humans? If he tried and worked his way to Nollik peacefully, maybe he could still save Nollik's life. Zagnite walked up to the outer gate. The heavy door retracted on large hinges. No one stopped him. So far, the charms were working. A few minutes ago, Zagnite had used his brain messaging antennas to tell the humans, "Let me in politely. Lock yourselves in the basement. Please and thank you." Several animals ran in too, presumably to join the humans in the basement. He looked for Nollik, but he couldn't find him anywhere. Even after he looked all over the base, he couldn't find Nollik. He feared the worst. He had to ask the humans directly. Down in the basement, the humans were waiting in a stupor, wondering how they ended up there. When Zagnite arrived, they spoke to him in Zycane. The charms had apparently taught the humans some of his language. "Your friend is in the UFO," they said. "He didn't agree with being in the conference room, so he went to the UFO we took apart." Spaceplane murderers! Zagnite felt fresh anger that he'd lost his way home. Without a way home, he was stranded in a world full of violent aliens. But something didn't make sense in his 250 IQ brain. Wait, you let Nollik go? You listened to him? He put down his weapons and talked. He wasn't trying to kill us like you. Zagnite was shocked. But you are the bovine beefaholics that would like nothing more than a juicy burger. One human spoke up. Your UFO was rich in chromium. We need chromium to build the Burger Faker 4000. Once we scale up production, we'll save the cows. You are trying to save cows? Zagnite was so confused. Your people mass murder fat cows, and now you say that you scientists are trying to save them? You took apart my spaceship to do that? The human nodded. By helping to prototype the synthetic meat process, your UFO just might end the mass murder of cows across Earth. You must feel honored as a weird alien cow-looking person yourself, lad. Honored? Zagnite was too insulted to feel impressed. I would rather find my co-pilot before you turn him into exotic relish. And I need a new space plane. If you are such great scientists, you shouldn't be afraid of the idea of making me a new ship. So I say, get to it. Please. Zagnite ran off to the lab where his space plane had been taken apart and found Nolik alone, fidgeting with his tail. Zagnite, are you all right? Did they use the fly swatter on you? No. Dang. Zagnite added, if I was one of them, I'd say they needed to use one on themselves for taking apart our space plane. Nolik sat in despair. What do we do? They simply aren't intelligent enough to fix up a new space plane. Zagnite thought about cows, and an idea occurred to him. A wacky idea that his dad might come up with. Cow brains were hardly sentient, but they held the key to solving their dilemma. He twitched his antenna and called out to all cows across the continent. Channel 9, breaking news. On Highway 47, thousands of cows are running in a massive stampede. If you are eating a beef burger, drop it and prepare to run. The bulls are charging. Here, there, everywhere. They're knocking down Burger Kings, Whataburgers. The cows are getting their revenge. Oh my gosh, they are coming this way! Watch out, Area 51! Crash. Shatter. The cows, I can't believe it! They're towing away jets and fuel drums! The cows approached the mountain base where Zagnite sat in deep meditation. The large gate shuddered open and admitted a multitude of cows dragging in military aircraft from the four corners of the country. One large group even worked together to haul in a large Boeing jumbo jet. With Nolik's help, the humans used these materials to build the Zycane, a brand spanking new spaceplane. It was beautiful. Its wings resembled that large jumbo jet. The eventual product ended up bigger than the monster size of an Antov 225. It had fully working vertical takeoff features and efficient engines. The trip home would be a breeze. Zagnite called it the Neutron 11. After a long detour, Zagnite and Nolik finally made it back to Zycan 8. In the return ceremony, Nolik explained their magnificent voyage. The Neutron 11 landed on Zycan 8 5 months after the Neutron 10 crashed on Earth. The Neutron 11 was loaded with fresh information and a cargo hold of Burger Faker 4000s. The crowd listened in awe as Zagnite told his experience with humans. Most of you were led to believe that humanity is a bad race, especially because of the way they treat cows, and how we look like cows too. But they are actually trying to end the human-cow war with this. Zagnite opened the Burger Faker 4000 and pulled out a prefabricated burger. Taking a bite, he fell into his chair. These are better than I expected. The crowd erupted into cheers. That is the alien burger crisis. And we will skip ahead now to another story in this anthology, written by Wesley during his 4th week of that beautiful summer, called 30 Days in Hawaii. Max got out of his bed and shook off a nightmare. In the dream, he had moved to the countryside, and every day was a new adventure. He shivered as he put on his business suit. He got into a taxi and drove to work, and by the time he got out, he felt refreshed. The dream was forgotten. He ate a breakfast burrito as he entered the office skyscraper, rose 9 floors, and finally sat down at his desk. He was ready for another normal day. On top of his desk was a memo from Boss the Boss. It summoned Max to the top story of the building, though Max decided it could wait until after he signed a few contracts. Max sat down and started to print his name. Again, and again, and again. He loved signing papers. Getting It Done Incorporated delivered hundreds of contracts every day, and Max signed them all. It was the best job he could imagine, signing papers, letter by letter. The contracts today authorize smashing buildings. Did he care about giant city construction projects? No. Did he read the contracts? No, that was somebody else's job. He just loved to print his lovely name, M-A-X. After writing his name 50 times, Max couldn't put off Boss any longer. He walked down the massive corridor to the elevator. He took the fastest route he could take. The 9th floor was like a maze, and Max knew every inch of it. While waiting for the elevator, he looked out the window to take in the view of the city sprawl. All of his coworkers preferred the view of the green courtyard better than this, and even one had an obsession with touching the grass. Max didn't hang out with them. He didn't understand how they could enjoy plants, which grew in unpredictable ways. He loved the view of the city instead because it showed how Getting It Done Incorporated made the world a reliable place where his job was secure. Ding! The elevator opened, and Max got in and pushed the button for the top floor. As he went up, the elevator played chiptunes, a special feature for going to meet Boss. It sounded suspiciously like a boss fight soundtrack he listened to as a kid. He began to feel anxious. When the elevator opened on the top floor, he walked into Boss's lair. He looked at all of the mahogany on the walls, stained dark, elegantly carved, and expensive. There wasn't any sign of the plain gray from the 9th floor. Surrounded by such luxury made Max feel like going back down the elevator to his perfectly bland office. Boss scooted papers into a pile. "Hello, Max." Great day for pushing papers," Max replied, creating his own catchphrase. "Or going on a vacation?" Boss sounded stern. "What do you mean?" Max felt confused. "You know that I don't want a vacation." "Yes, I know that, but the government wants you to take one." Boss stood up and popped his knuckles. 30 days, mandatory." Max trembled violently. "I can't survive that." "You know who can't survive," Boss said. "The government says they're going to fine Getting It Done $3 billion for enslaving workers if you never take a vacation. That is enough to leave the company in ruins. My job demands you take a vacation. Tomorrow we shove you on a plane to Hawaii." "What?" Max fell apart, thinking about giant tropical plants in a land without papers to sign. Why? Is the government corrupt? What evil president would force someone to take a vacation? "It's all expenses paid, but if you get a golf club subscription, it's coming out of your paycheck. Now get back to work. My corporate jet leaves at 8 a.m. and you better be on it. See you in a month." Max slouched in his chair and looked at his last stack of papers for this month. He worked efficiently as the building next door crashed down and contractors towed cranes into the area. When he was done, he looked up pictures of Hawaii on his computer. He saw no big city sprawl. The people there looked like they hardly worked a day in their life. He winced at the colors of the buildings and prepared for the worst. Should he quit his job? He won't need to take a vacation then, and he could sign his name on his resume. Just then, an ad popped up. People raving about the best night of sleep of their life. Turns out the neurosurgeon, Dr. Drem, lived in Hawaii and had a special on his famous dream removal surgery. Max thought, I could put the surgery on boss's dime, and I'll bring my stacks of spare paper to get me through the days. This just might work. He went home and started packing. The plane accelerated down the runway, its brilliant engines flaring with the newest propulsion system. Boss's red plane was a luxury. The seats were suited for Boss himself. Boss hadn't wished him any goodbyes. No one did. So many others in the airport had sad people following them, wishing them Godspeed, but not Max. Max felt a strange regret, not about the horrors of the vacation, but about the solitude. He shoved it down and pulled out a paper. He wrote his name again, and again. He felt odd, as if he was awake in a dream. There was more to him than he could feel or understand. What was that pang about? He was just fine with solitude, so why did he feel lonely? As the plane took off, he braced for what could be the worst month of his life. He was so tired, he nodded off. Max woke up when the plane hit the ground of the runway. The world outside was a sea of green. There were no skyscrapers. There were no big malls. Just a village with a hotel. When Max trotted off the plane, there was no way for him to know what would happen next. He walked into the hotel and up to the counter. Reservation for one. Max swiped the company card through the machine. The register showed an error. The clerk said, happens all the time, and reached under the counter to pull out an even older register. Max shuddered, but the dinosaur machine worked. Enjoy your stay, the clerk said. On his way to his room, Max ran into his next-door hotel neighbor, a man in neon athletic wear and a head of hair that swooped in one direction. Hello, I'm Stan, the man said with limitless energy. How do you do? Not good. Do you know anywhere that allows people to be in a simulation of a work environment? Max asked. No, not in Hawaii. I haven't heard of someone trying to escape to their jobs on a vacation. Don't you have a family to vacation with? Max answered, eyes dull as chalk. No, I live alone. My family is me, my best pen, and my name, Max. Stan's eyes shimmered. Well, that makes two of us. I would like to have a family, but I don't have much luck. So what are you doing here if you want to work so badly? It's the government's fault. My boss told me that there was no way to keep my job other than going on a vacation, so now I'm stuck here for a month. All expenses paid. Stan whistled. Ooh, that sounds amazing. What are you going to do? Probably get the surgery done on my brain to make it stop dreaming. I hear that Dr. Drem is the best neurosurgeon in the world. Oh, that doesn't sound like fun, Stan said. Maybe we could go surfing together before you become a vegetable. I don't have anyone to hang out with, so my schedule's empty. Stan was talking faster than he thought possible. Max felt he had to say, okay, how about Monday? They exchanged numbers, and Max walked to his room. Setting down his bags, Max locked his door and turned on his desk light. In an otherwise dark room, Max pulled out his pen and opened his box of papers. Monday came quickly. Too quickly. Max had exhausted his paper supply and needed to buy more. Stan was all over his phone, reminding him of his promise to hang out at the beach. But Max tried to slip out of the hotel. Stan spotted him down the hall and shouted, "Beach party!" Before he knew it, Max was on the beach with a rented surfboard. While Stan waxed his surfboard, Max watched a video series on how to surf and was ready to get it over with. He found Stan digging out a beach fort. "Ready to hit the water?" Stan asked. Max flipped off the board many times. He wanted to make a good run once, but he fell over the tip of the wave and crashed into the water below. Stan made clean runs, making stunts that others liked to wow at. During a break, they both went for ice cream and lobster. There was also a sandcastle competition that Stan won. When Max got back to his hotel room, the sky was orange and he was tired. He sat at his little desk. He felt reluctant to write his name, so instead of his name, he wrote about surfing in his notebook. During the long night, Max was troubled by a difficult dream. He was at the beach with Stan, and he was floating, wearing someone's cape, which flapped behind him. The water flooded into a tidal wave and smashed him on the beach. It hurt like the time he fell into a ditch as a kid. After getting smacked onto the beach, Max saw Stan running up as a gargantuan lobster rose from the ocean floor. It lobbed surfboards at them. Max fought back, jumping onto the lobster and tried to pry off its shell. But Stan fell to the ground, impaled by a surfboard. But Max realized that it was a dream and he told himself, "Wake up, wake up, wake up!" He finally did. The dream reminded him of the surgery and how great it would feel to get a solid night's sleep. Max stared at the ceiling. He felt small. His ceiling seemed to be taller, and when he looked at his desk, there wasn't a stack of papers full of his name. All he found was a story about surfing. He almost looked forward to seeing Stan. He walked out of his room and saw the hotel exit sign. When he left the hotel, sadly, his joy faded as he remembered the regular glory of his job. He sat on a bench seat, looking longingly at the airport runway, which was nearby. He pulled out the portable calendar that he had and crossed off yesterday. 27 days left. After filling the notepad he had with his name, he flipped back and read the pages with the surfing story. He remembered feeling joy in an unpredictable adventure, but today he felt like doing nothing more than routine writing. He traveled to the paper store, stocked up on printer paper, and went back to his hotel room and wrote his name. A few days later, his phone buzzed. Stan invited him to join for one of those helicopter tours. Max remembered the fun and decided, why not? After hanging out with Stan, it was time for Max to meet Dr. Drem for a consult on the neurosurgery that would remove Max's dreams. The surgery would be paid for by his employer, so Max didn't mind the $30,000 cost. He entered Dr. Drem's office. "Hello." Max felt his voice had grown lighter, less gloomy. Max sat down. The surgeon crossed his arms. "Troubled by dreams, eh?" he asked. "Yeah, I want to know about the surgery." The surgeon looked out the window. "The surgery is permanent. Once it is complete, you will no longer want to make changes to your life. Are you sure this is what you want?" Max thought back to his name and his job. The world wanted him to do adventurous activities, but Max knew what was best: a predictable, stable life. He would no longer have to fear the horrors of adventure. After the appointment, Max decided he would get the treatment, yet he felt dizzy with confusion. In a few weeks, he would go back to the bland gray office that he knew. There would be no escape from the routine. This whole vacation would be nothing but a dark dream. The next week was the day of the surgery. Max told himself there was nothing to fear. He entered the hospital, put on the gown, laid down in the chair, and they strapped on the gas. It happened very fast. Max had been emotionally restless for weeks since arriving in Hawaii, so he conked out immediately. The surgery lasted for a long 3 hours. While the surgery happened, Max had his last dream. He was floating over an abyss of darkness. There were no stars. The rock platform below him was white as fresh snow, but it was unstable. Too small a rock in this giant space, Max knew the platform was meant to fill the whole abyss. As quickly as the dream started, the rock he was standing on began to fall into the oblivion. Max fell too. The fall felt endless, hopeless. But falling next to him was a rope there to save his life, hooked to the ceiling above, a massive rock. But Max turned from it. He didn't grab the rope. Instead, he looked around the abyss below him, his mind telling him it was a crowded airport. People hugged one another, wishing Godspeed on their voyage. He saw in their eyes a reflection of the rope he didn't take. Max now yearned for it. If only he could get that rope, his life would have cause, meaning. He fell further into the abyss, through another scene clearer than the last. Stan brought the rope to him, but disappeared before Max had a chance to catch it. Max swam for it, but suddenly he was dragged away from the rope in the direction of the sound of his name. He didn't care about his name anymore. He wanted his rope. The rope was life. He swam through the void in the direction of the rope, but was torn away by the sound of the surgeon's promise. No more dreams. This was horrid, Max eventually perceived, felt, heard, and smelled one last scene. He was at another airport. He saw Stan again, holding the rope at the other side of the terminal. He struggled to walk. He was wading through a waist-high flood. It rushed at his feet. When he looked down, he saw trillions of papers full of his name, all trying to drown him. He pushed through the names to Stan. He got there and stopped just out of reach of the rope. He tried with all of his might to step one step further, but he couldn't. He was frozen still. Max felt his mouth move. "Goodbye, Stan." And beckoned by the heartless sound of jet engines, he turned around to board the plane as he shouted vainly at himself, "Max, you are walking away from your life!" But when he turned to look back, standing at the top step, he was whisked away into a dreamless void where he fell for hours, screaming one eternal scream that shattered all comfort. Max woke up, screaming. The doctors all rushed to him, wondering what had gone wrong. After several breaths, he stopped. He looked at them and only remembered a vague recollection of the nightmare. He walked home, getting used to his new head. He had lost all ability to dream, even daydream. But did he want to dream? He only felt numb. His phone had 32 missed messages from Stan. Max cleared his notifications and put his phone away. Max looked at this portable calendar and saw that it was the day to return to his old life. These had been the easiest days of his vacation. He had sat every day at his desk, mindlessly signing his name and clearing his notifications whenever Stan invited him to parties and trips. Max walked with his paper boxes to the jet that awaited him. He had had no dreams since the surgery, and that last nightmare he'd lost all memory of except that it had happened. But when he arrived at the jet stairs and saw someone running across the tarmac, Stan, Max dropped all the boxes in surprise. Papers scattered everywhere. Stan was holding a rope, waving it up high and shouting, "We didn't go rock climbing!" Max felt a stirring recollection, something on the tip of his mind. He waded through the papers and stepped just out of arm's reach of Stan. I'm leaving, Stan. Goodbye. He waited for Stan to reply, but Stan said nothing. He only looked sad. So Max turned around, climbed the stairs. As Max stopped at the last step and turned around, he felt a tug as he saw Stan's solemn expression. The rope, the rope, the rope, the rope, the rope! It all came back to him. It was the rope! Get the rope! He tried to move. He tried to take control of himself, but he didn't have the ability to dream it. He turned around and went in the plane. As the jet plane started to accelerate down the runway, Max heard a grunt and a bang from the back of the plane. It sounded like engine trouble. The door to the staff room slammed open and Stan stepped forward. Stan, what are you doing here? Max shouted. It's the surgery, isn't it? Stan said. That's why you're acting like a vegetable. Max couldn't remember his dreams, but he remembered he used to dream, and he was living his dream. He'd have to live his dreams if he wanted to live at all. Max shouted, Toss me the rope. Stan did. Max rushed to the pilot cabin. We need to take over this thing. He tore open the door and tied up the pilot. The flight attendant was freaking out. Mutiny! Max tied her up too. Now he and Stan sat in the pilot seat of Boss's private jet, ready to rule the world. Where to? Max asked, his eyes bright as the stars. And do you know how to fly this thing? Famous last words, Stan laughed. Just pull up. I love that one. Oh my gosh. Well, we will stop here. It has been a delight to share these stories that my boys wrote in this book, The Good Guys Win. And I will say, as a parting note on all of this, we did create some AI songs to commemorate these strange tales, and we put them up on Spotify. You can find them by searching for my name and The Good Guys Win, and they should come right up. They are silly and ridiculous, and I hope you enjoy them in any of your spare time. And having said that, we will convene again next week. Thank you for joining us this evening with Lit by the Fire, and have a good one.